Audio sermons from Peachtree Christian Church.
Today's scripture reading is from the Gospel of John, chapter 12, verses 20 through 33. Now among those who went up to worship at the festival were some Greeks. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and said to him, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Philip went and told Andrew. Then Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their life lose it, and those who hate their life must live in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will be my servant also. Whoever serves me, the Father will honor. Now my soul is troubled, and what should I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it is for this reason that I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came from heaven, "I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again." The crowd standing there heard it and said that it was thunder. Others said, "An angel has spoken to him." Jesus answered, "This voice has come for your sake, not for mine. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out, and I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." He said this to indicate the kind of death he was to die. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Please be seated. Happy St. Patrick's Day. It is a delight to be with you in worship. As most of you are accustomed now to moments before I preach, I like to take a moment for breath to center ourselves and make room and space for the Spirit. I heard a meditation instructor who's a psychologist this week call it the sacred pause. And I like that because so often we got to let our brains catch up with our bodies. Aren't we busy? Torn this way and that, have a lot vying for our attention. Sometimes we show up to church and I'm convinced that our brains haven't even caught up to where our seats are. And so we're going to start with a holy pause, but I want to give you a gift in this holy pause. Reflecting on the text this week, I've been thinking about how people have made room and space for us. I've been thinking about how saints have prepared a way for us, that we have life because other people have loved us into existence, and that we have life that is godly or holy, or life that's made fully alive by Jesus because of the example of other people. So who has loved you into existence? Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, used to invite people to reflect on this a lot, whether it was commencement speeches or dinner parties. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for a moment and just think, who has given you life? Who has loved you into existence? Who has shown you the way? And it might be a saint named Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, or a saint by a name that we all know like Patrick. But people have loved and lived in such a way as to give you life. So pause, the sacred pause, and think on who has loved you into the life that you've been given. God of life, we pause now to remind ourselves of the tapestry of love you have woven from the centuries and from of old, that we may have life and may have it to the full. We are so grateful for the life you've given us. We are so grateful for the teaching and instruction and illumination. We are so thankful for the love of other people. Let us be people of love that give it away as well, that give more life away and more joy. God, whether anyone else here knows it or not, you and I know that without you, I can do nothing. So we pause in this sacred moment, asking your Spirit to fall in this place. That though these words have been studied and prayed over and thought over and contemplated about this week, let them not be mine. Let them be from your heart to our hearts together, that we may have fresh, new, illuminated life. It is in the matchless name of your Son, Jesus Christ, we pray, and God's people together say, Amen. This morning, I'd like to talk to you about hell. Hell is a concept that I think has probably crossed our minds and crossed our lips more times than we care to admit. I've heard that word used with a positive after it. Hell, yes. I've heard of hells and no's. Sometimes I've heard people say in my life that something wouldn't happen until hell froze over. Many of us think that hell is a hot place. When I moved to Atlanta from the Midwest, I was told that the portal of hell existed somewhere in South Carolina. I'm not sure if that's true. That's what somebody told me. I think it might have come from the words of a coach who once coached for Florida and then South Carolina. I'm not sure. But what is hell? Is hell an ontological space? That is to say, is it a real place that God creates and sustains from all time and eternity to put people in for punishment and retribution for a life lived poorly? Is that what hell is? Or is hell a metaphor in Scripture? Are we using language that is figurative and metaphorical and symbolic to mean something else? Like when Jesus tells stories about wheat and tares, and he talks about half of things being cast into fire. Is that an eternal destiny, a place, or is it a metaphor for purification? Further, is hell a place? When Jesus or another New Testament writer refers to it, is it referring to a physical, geographical location, maybe, I don't know, outside of Jerusalem's walls? Maybe it smells of sulfur. Maybe there's fire. Maybe it's a garbage dump. Historians, archaeologists, linguists, scholars, they debate these things. What is hell? Is it an essential Christian teaching? We are a part of a tradition here at Peachtree Christian Church that likes to say this phrase, and I love it myself. In the essentials, unity. In the opinions, liberty. And for those of you who know the next, fill in the blank. In all things, charity or love. In essentials, unity. In opinions, liberty. In all things, charity. I really like that. I like that because what its heart is it's a plea for unity amidst diversity. It's an admission that not one of us has it all figured out, this whole thing called Christianity. And there is some diversity of thought and question and debate, but at least we can gather on things that are essential. Is hell an essential thought? We teach a class here at the church called Starting Point, and I like to tell people about the history of our church and our tradition and what makes it unique. And I love to share with them in the essentials bit. And I remember teaching a class, and it was going quite well. And I remember throwing that phrase at them, thinking that was going to really open up their imagination and make them intrigued by us. And then one fella raised his hand and goes, "But what are the essentials?" Now, it's a tough question to ask for people like us, because we like to tell people in our tradition that we don't really do creeds. But the truth is, our tradition didn't have a problem with the oldest creeds, the Apostles and the Nicene Creed. We had problems on the American frontier when everyone was trying to find a way to separate from each other by coming up with new and better creeds, or should I say new and worse ones, more specific, more granular. The ancient creeds, the ones of old, the ones we actually have listed in our hymnal, are very general. And they're what the early church came around. They're these summarizations of faith, and there's a lot of room in them for differences of opinion. So I thought I was going to be real savvy. I was going to say, turn to number 355 in your pew hymnal, friend, and I'll show you one of the creeds that kind of outlines some of our essentials. But before I could get any of that out, this man sitting there earnestly, and with a very sincere look on his face, asked me, "What are the essentials?" He said, "I hope hell is an essential." Now, that bothered me a bit. Not that he thought that hell's an essential, but that he hoped for it. How does that strike you? I don't know. I've been a Christian for a long time, and I've done a lot of study to this stuff, and I always get bothered when a theology or a preacher is really focused on hell. There is room always there. When you're focused on that concept, there's room for abuse. It often follows. What is hell? What's the opposite of hell? Maybe we can get a handle of it by thinking of its opposite. What is the opposite of hell? Well, there you go. Some people like the nice dualism. There's a bad place and there's a good place called heaven. But let me suggest to you for a moment that when you're really looking at the New Testament, it's really hard to understand what we're talking about when we're talking about hell. Does this word mean this thing? Does this image mean this thing? The translators, the exegetes, the historians, the theologians, the first couple centuries of the church really struggle with it. And might I suggest the same is the case with heaven? I mean, is this eternal place that exists somewhere that people go to now and wait for eternity? Or is it just where God is now? Is it wherever God is? There are these debates. Neither thing is clear, but I think we can stop here by saying, can we all agree at Peachtree Christian Church that when we're referring to the concept of hell, we're referring to a concept that is less than ideal? Can we agree on that part? It's not talking about the sort of life that we want for ourselves. Or maybe you have some fundamental brokenness and you are interested in hell, but I think we never want it for the people we love. So let's just assume that it's not the good thing. And maybe when we talk about heaven, what we're trying to do is talk about the good thing, but maybe we can fill that out more. What is the heavenly? What is the stuff over here that we're supposed to want on the other side? Maybe think of it like this. That is where life really is. When we're talking about the heavenly or the way of Jesus or going that path, we're talking about a life that is flourishing and thriving and whole and good. Maybe that's where we're talking about where joy can be found or glory. You know what glory is, don't you? Glory is the divine beauty, the divine majesty, the divine authority, the divine sublimity brought down into your mundane moments. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want to have a glimpse of God in the now? Oh, yes, the glory, the Lord, the beauty, the joy, the happiness, the thriving life, the living to the fullest. Jesus says in John 10:10, I come to give life and give it abundantly or to the full. Yet I'm still asking myself, because it's this nagging question I read about daily, I hear about it thrown around, and I hear preachers talk about it, and it's used as a pseudo swear word in our culture. What is hell? I got a better question. Have you ever been through hell? There was once a teenage boy who I imagine went through hell. People confuse him. They think that he's an Irishman, but he was from probably Britain, maybe Wales. Some think Scotland, not likely. And one day, while he was out and about doing teenage boy things, he was kidnapped by pirates from an island called Ireland. And he was taken away for 6 years, trafficked as a slave for 6 years. And there, he was a slave. I don't know about you, but when I think of being trafficked as a human being, being owned by another person, forced labor, taken away from my mom, my dad, my loved ones, my friends, taken away from the place where I speak a language to a place of a different language, taken away from a place that had all the cultural symbols and religious symbols that make sense to me to a place run by chieftains and druids speaking languages I do not know what are, and where everybody from Europe thinks these are wild people on the edges of the earth. No one knows what's beyond Ireland in those days. Hey, Rome only made it halfway up the English island anyway. They don't know what's out there, but they were afraid of it. Going into a situation like that might make me feel like I'm in hell. And that was the beginning to the life of dear old St. Patrick, where he would spend 6 years as a slave. Have you ever been through hell? You know, so much of what we think about hell in the contemporary church and television preachers and writers and pundits, really, it's not taken straight from the New Testament or even the ancient church, but really it comes out of a constructed and built imagination out of the medieval period, which is still ironic. It's still ironic because it doesn't sound at all like the most glorious voice that wrote about hell in the medieval period. You know who I refer to? The Divine Comedy by Dante. He imagined what hell might be like. Now, most of us, we probably still imagine it as a place of fire and sulfur and hotness and torment. Oh, for Dante, it was different. It was full of torment, but not of the kind you might think. You see, as Dante was led down to the ninth circle of hell, where Lucifer, the Satan, this fallen angel from heaven, had come to live, he went right down to the depths. And you know what he found? Not a hot place, but a cold place. Freezing cold. The winds blow from all directions, making it cold. Stuck in ice, he was in the cold. The winged feathers of an angel had evolved into the leathery bat-skin wing of Satan. And there he was, freezing. And when you're freezing, you're shivering, and you turn inward to yourself. And ironically, as he was stuck in the cold, icy bog, Satan would flap those big leathery wings to try to get out from which he was stuck in. And the irony that Satan couldn't figure out was all the force he was generating was freezing him stuck all the more. Dante is a brilliant spiritual thinker. He is reminding us that the very thing that we reach for to give us better life, the things that we aspire to, that we think are going to answer all of our problems, are often the things that imprison us in a state of hell. And think about it being cold for a moment. When you're cold, you turn into yourself. Have you ever been to hell? You've been through it? I have. When I first went to the hospital for liver disease, they thought I was cool to go home. The second time I went to the hospital, right before it, I was dying on the couch outside on my patio, actively circling the drain. You know the story, but maybe you don't know this part. It was the heat of summertime. And I laid outside in front of a heater with sweatpants on, a hoodie, and wool socks. Now, from the Midwest, we have at least one pair of wool socks in our drawer, and I still have them down here in case I go home for Christmas. So I had my wool socks on, I was bundled up, and I was shivering cold. I was so cold. And so focused on my own mania, so focused on my own self that I couldn't hear. I didn't know that Colleen was on the phone with the doctor. She's demanding I be rushed to the emergency room. I couldn't answer her questions. I was focused on me right here and me right here. Something was shivering. And I couldn't hear my mom and dad ask me if I needed some hot tea or some cold water or what to do. And my kids who came over telling me, they love you, Daddy, I love you, kissing me on the forehead, kissing me on the face. I had no time for them, no space for them, nothing of me for them. That was hell. Let me submit a definition to you about what hell is. Before I do, let me be careful with my thinking and make room over here for you. There is at least a type of hell where we suffer at the hands of other people, where we are enslaved and trafficked, where people who have authority and privilege and power impose it on us or on others in unjust and horrible, horrible ways. And that can be hell for people. There is a hell where sociopaths and psychopaths prey on people, and that is a hell for people. And there is a hell where little innocent children are beaten and abused and left alone and overwhelmed by the terrible, twisted desires of an adult or an addict or what have you. Those are hellacious. But we're not talking about that. Because what we're talking about is a couple Greek fellas who want to see Jesus. Why? Well, they come around because Jesus has been preaching and he's been teaching, and his promise is interesting to the people. You see, what Jesus has been bringing is enlightenment or something new for people. And here are some Greek fellows, and they're hearing this Jewish man teach, and they think there's something inspiring or enlightening, and in good faith, they want to come to him. It rather reminds me of the Beatles. You know, they had everything in the world, but they looked for something outside of their own country. They looked to India for enlightenment, something to teach them more truth. And so they come to Jesus, and they capture the attention of Philip. Isn't that interesting? They talk to Philip. Philip never gets any play in the Gospels. Philip's name is a Greek name. These Greek fellows are intelligent. They grab onto Philip, who grabs onto Andrew. They see one of the brothers that they know. They say, hey, we want to hear about this Jesus fellow. We want to know more about Jesus. And so they go off to Jesus, Philip and Andrew, and Jesus says some rather strange things, doesn't he? Jesus says to them this. Jesus says, we'll tell them it's about time for my glory to be revealed. Jesus never answers things the way that you and I would answer them. Later, he tells them that it's about the time for him to be lifted up, and this is what he's referring to. He doesn't say it, but Jesus is referring to the way he will die. That's what the narrator tells us. So Jesus is implying that the cruciform nature of his life, that he will die on a cross, is where he will reveal the glory of God, which this shape is anything but glory. It is slave, traitorous, shameful death. Christianity is a paradox, my friend. It looks contradictory, but it is not. Something about this is the meaning of the world that the disciples can't get it yet. They don't even hear the voice of the Father. When the voice of the Father speaks about the Son, they think it's thunder. They surmise things about it. Jesus says it was really for them, but you missed it. And Jesus' other language about glory, he tells these people, tell your Greek friends, that if they really, really, really want to have life, if they want to have life to the full, they have to lose it. But if they're the kind of people who have dreams for themselves, who want to grasp onto life, who want to make their bones, if they're the people who want to have a resume so long so as to feel good about themselves and to impress other people with it, if they are the type of people who want to follow a 1990s Robin Williams misquoted from the ancient Roman, carpe diem, seize the day type kind of life where you're just going to get it on your own, man. If that's what they're going for, guess what follows that kind of life? Death. Paradoxically, for Christianity, the only way to have a life worth living is to have a life that you give away. Is to have the kind of life where you make space for other people, to where you hear other people's opinions, good ones and bad ones. It's where you allow people their grumpinesses. It's where you offer dignity even when you don't understand. It's when you listen, and when you still are confused, you listen more. But it's to serve the other. It is to make space for the other. It is to give your gifts away and what you have as a gift to other people. It is to make room, my friends. And only there is life that is heavenly, joyful, thriving, flourishing, and glorious. Only there will you have an adventure called life. So back to Dante and me dying on the couch. Why is Dante talking about hell as it's cold and not hot? Because when it's cold, my friends, you are turned inwardly to yourself. Note the opposite. Note when you go to someone's home and it's gracious. How do we describe them? Oh, they were so warm. They were so warm. They were inviting. They were welcoming. They brought me, and she gave me a kiss on the cheek. He gave me a hug. There was such conviviality of spirit. I know you use that word every day. Conviviality. Con with viviality, life. There was a withness of life. And look at this. I'm describing warmth, and I'm opening my body. Do you see what I'm doing? It's not a mistake that's how we imagine it in the world. And that's why Dante wrote of as cold, because I think we can define hell, and I will submit for your approval today a few definitions of hell aside from the abuses of others. The kind that Jesus warns the Greeks about as they're seeking their own spiritual enrichment. Here's one. Hell is a world of your own making. Hell is getting everything you want. Hell is a room filled with mirrors, nary a door or window. Hell is when you were beaten by the monster of ego and splayed on the floor for the buzzards. Hell is hoarding. Hell is in service of the monsters inside of you and you alone. My friends, Jesus tells us, you look out for yourself, you're on the road to destruction. You offer yourself as a gift. You lay yourself down, and there's life to the full. What I'm saying to you may sound deep, because it is deep in the recesses of our soul to overcome this divide between us, between getting what we plan for and want and giving ourselves over. It's so challenging. I think there's a few practical suggestions I could make that would help us even just think about living more the way Jesus is inviting all of us to live. For all of us like these Greeks who just want to see Jesus. Here's one. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to assume the worst of people? I often say we should assume the best. I say that, though it's so hard for me to do. Assuming the best of people is tantamount to grace, but I want you to really be honest and think about how often it is that we are vigilantly looking for problems, scanning people for bad intentions, assuming the worst, girding ourselves up for an argument or a fight, so protective of our own ideas, opinions, and biases that we cannot see clearly. We talked last week about how Anthony DeMello tells us that we think we see people and things as they are, but we don't. We see them as we are. We can't get out of our own way enough to see the truth of another person, another story, another argument, another situation, and so we find that we're scanning the world for problems. When we assume the worst, we don't just put something between us and other people. We close in on ourselves and what we expect of the world only, and we don't live fully. Speaking of living in boxes, the narrative that we tell ourselves about ourselves can be so constraining, it can be hellacious, my friends. There's a friend I know who was beaten and abused and abandoned by his parents. And his life, when he was coming up, he developed a narrative, almost like a fight song for himself, where he would tell everybody, people are going to hate on me, I'm going to show them. I'm going to stand up to the haters. And he said that, and it worked really well for him when he was 13 years old, and he needed to grow in self-confidence. When mom left him, he needed to find his own inner strength. And it worked at 19 when he needed to go to college and graduate college. But you know what? He's like 50-some years old right now, and he's got a heart condition, and it's really bad. And I talked to him, and he says, you know what? I'm going to stand up to the haters. I'm going to prove everybody wrong. I'm going to show them. And I said, who is hoping that your heart condition is going to get worse? Who is fighting against you? Who is talking bad about you? Put your sword away. The narrative he had when he was young doesn't work anymore, and it's hurting him. And here's the last one. I am convinced there's something true of all of us, and I know that I need to assume the best of us, and I think I am, but I'll assume this too. If you can hear me, you're broken. If you can hear me, you have wounds that maybe no one else can see. Might I suggest that for you to truly, truly heal, you have to learn to accept yourself. Which I know might sound like a wishy-washy thing to say. Preacher, how do we just accept everything about ourselves? Doesn't Jesus want us not to sin? Doesn't God want us to change? Yeah. But you know who already looks at you and loves you for who you are? Do you know who you never hide from, who sees you right now? Do you know who's here with you, closer than you are to your own face? It's the one who loves you and accepts you as you are. And until you can accept that, you won't be able to love others well. Only when you can accept the fact that you are loved like that can you then say, I am a gift to offer to other people. St. Patrick might have felt like he was in hell when he was kidnapped and trafficked for 6 years. Later, legend tells us that he studied for priesthood or something. He was a cleric of some type. And he had a vision where someone was carrying him some letters, and these were the letters of the Irish. And in these letters it said, bring us the gospel, slave boy. And the thing that makes St. Patrick amazing is that he went back to the place where he was enslaved. He spent time with the people who held him captive in a foreign land, had foreign gods, and he brought the gospel. And I wonder if that call felt like hell to him then. Or is it because he was so beautifully able to give his life away for the good of others? Maybe he found himself in heaven.